Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Protect and Serve. My name is John Arnold. Here in Protect and Serve, this is the only live forum where you will hear directly from the police and the community unadulterated truths about the police and community relations. This is the only place where you're going to hear 3 points of view: the viewpoint of the police, why they do what they do, and the manner in which they do it; the community, why you do what you do in the manner in which you do it. And then you're going to get expert opinion that's going to give an overall viewpoint based on years of law enforcement and community involvement experience. Tonight, we have a great show lined up for you. First, we're going to have a recap of the cases that are making national attention, including the newest case out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And that is, of course, with George Floyd. And it seems that tonight this show is directly on point. It is something that is needed because if it stressed community policing more, you would have better control of situations around the nation, not just only in the cities that I just named. But joining me tonight is my expert commentators who need no introduction. They're both have worked with me through years of experience. I'm talking about retired Detective Stephanie Treadwell from the Newark Police Department and retired Detective Anthony Cox from the Essex County Prosecutor's Office. Hello.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Look at that, Anthony. You snuck out and broke open and got a haircut, huh? I'm not gonna put you on. I'm not gonna say anything. Yeah. Listen. Here it is. Let's get at it. All right. We have some new developments in the two cases that we talked about last week. Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. Let's talk about Breonna Taylor. So far, what I've heard is that, as we suspected, was the case against her boyfriend. The charge against her boyfriend was going to be dropped, and rightfully so. We had a inclination that was going to happen, and I just heard a couple of days ago that happened. But there were some other things that popped up that I want you to look at. If we can have the video of the Breonna Taylor case with it was interesting. The department made a statement, as well as the attorney for the family. If the editor can bring the video up that we sent earlier about.
Attorneys representing Taylor's family say witnesses claim the LMPD narcotics officers never knocked or announced their presence, which LMPD claims they did per department policy.
The initial report that was given by the head of PIU was that the officers knocked, they announced themselves, and then they were met with gunfire when they came in. We're now up to 6 neighbors that say that there was no knock, no announce.
We did not forego the announcement, even in a no-knock warrant. The last thing we want to do is to have someone shoot at us.
Councilwoman Sexton Smith has also called for the murder charges against Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker.
All right, let's have it. Steph.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Okay, as far as that no-knock warrant go, why would someone, I'm talking about the boyfriend, why would he shoot at somebody if they're saying the police? This guy had no criminal history, no violence. I know they didn't have no problem in complying. Actually, he worked for the post office, and she was an EMT for 2 hospitals. So, you got to give me a different story than that.
Yeah, that's actually right. I know Tony. We were talking about something before, just in getting no knock warrants. I mean, it's not something that you just go and pull out of a hat. There's a special request, a special procedure. No knock warrants are actually in Jersey. They're very hard to get because
exactly.
Yeah.
No knock basically.
I think we're a little.
Basically, you have to get it from a judge. Well, all search warrants come from a judge, but specifically ask. You have to put into the search warrant the reason you want a no knock. Basically, it's weapons may be at the location, or a criminal or person who has a criminal history, very violent criminal history in their past. Those are the reasons that you can get one in the exigent circumstances for a no-knock warrant in New Jersey, and a certain time that you want to do this warrant. They did it at 1 a.m. I mean, that's dangerous right there. But a no-knock gives you the opportunity to just ram the door without knocking and announcing at the door. Of course, once you breach the door, you announce who you are. Police, police, let me see your hands, anybody that's in here. But a no-knock allows you to just breach the door, which means hit it, and go in. Yeah. But something's coming up. They said they vote for a no-knock, and they said they knocked on the door. So why write for a no-knock if you're knocking and announcing? That doesn't make sense.
Right. That's what was curious to me, because here it is, you ask for a no-knock warrant, but then your department, your PIO, your public information officer, goes out and says that oh, we had a no-knock warrant, but we announced that we were the police. And let's look at the witness accounts. You have 6 witnesses that say, there was no announcement that they were the police. No one knew that they were the police at the door, which makes sense, meaning that they followed the no-knock warrant procedure. Okay. But the problem I have with it is that, one, what was the exigent circumstances that they used, or why? Because the probable cause of getting a search warrant for her house initially was kind of weak. It said the car was parked outside of a house of a known drug dealer. Okay. All right. They believe mail came to the house. Okay. All right. Let's look at those two. In urban areas, urban communities, my mom and dad live in the West Ward on South 18th Street. The neighborhood has changed. My mother and father were senior citizens, but when we lived there, it was more middle working class people. My dad was a police officer. My mom was a homemaker. But when I go to visit my mom, when I went to go visit my mom and dad, God bless them, they went on to be with the Lord. But when I went to go visit them, there was drug dealers that lived on the street that I knew about. There were criminal elements that lived on the street. My car was parked in front of 255 South 18th Street, where I grew up at. Does that mean that you have enough evidence to come to my house in the suburbs or in the next town over and get a search warrant to come in and bust in my door unannounced on a no-knock warrant at that? No, because we all have family members that live in neighborhoods where there are elements. That's where we come from. We come from the inner cities, and that's what's there. But the fact that the department said that they did this on all of their no-knock warrants, what is the purpose of getting no-knock warrants if you're going to go and announce yourself? You're giving up your element of surprise. Now, granted, out of the few times that we've done no-knock warrants during narcotics raids, they were no-knock. They were for a purpose, as you said, as Tony said, because we had bad guys behind. We had cop killers behind the door. We had people who were wanted for multiple murders behind the door. We didn't announce that we were the police coming in, but when we got in there, we announced that we were the police because we meant business. But we were physically in the place and we were up. We had the element of surprise. That's what a no-knock warrant gives us, and that's the problem I have with what's going on. I just think personally they're going to have a real problem down the line. Maybe not criminally, but there's going to be so much that's going to come out of this civilly. There's going to have to be instruction. There's going to have to be training procedures, SOPs. I mean, from the top to the bottom, it's going to be, everything's going to have to be looked at and be revamped.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
True. Innocent person lost their life, and granted, this business we're in, sometimes accidents happen. We've all been on jobs where we've lost someone. Someone was lost in a firefight or something like that, or during the course of our operation. And a lot of times, we come back, we regroup, we think out, we debrief, and we find out, hey, somebody made a mistake. So we want to make sure that we watch this case very carefully moving forward. I know that the charges against the boyfriend was supposedly dropped last week, and we knew that wasn't going to be something that was going to stick anyway. There was an allegation of friendly fire, which in that type of situation is not unusual. As we said, Stephanie, you were exposed to friendly fire during the course of the operation yourself. So you know exactly. You've been there before.
Yeah, it burned like hell too.
Yeah, I heard they're very hot. I know at the range.
Also, the
Do it. So yeah, I understand
assistant prosecutor. The assistant prosecutor stated that the officer that was hit, his wallet saved him. Now, 9 times out of 10, saved him from, more harm. 9 times out of 10, carry your wallet in your back pocket. If you're going through a door, unless you turn around and you're running back, you're getting hit by somebody behind you. So we'll see where that comes from.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Let's move down to Georgia. So now, understanding the Maud Arbery case, there was another arrest. There was a total of now 3 arrests. And as we discussed last week, Georgia in 2020, Georgia, the state that I love, my family's from there. They have the best watermelon in the entire nation.
Okay.
Georgia. Yes, Georgia. Listen, I got to give them a shout out, Georgia. But they messed up. In 2020, you do not have a hate crime bill. Why? What is up with that? But thank God the Department of Justice is going to look into, considering bringing civil rights violations against all of the suspects and charging with a hate crime. Because the way it's working out is that's how it's starting to look. That it is a hate crime. You can't jump in the car. We can't jump in the car and use deadly force action against someone like that. Nevertheless, the father and son team that did it. The father used to be a police officer. He got dismissed for use of force. He didn't complete use of force or failed use of force, but that's one of the reasons why they said they let him go. Now here it is. He's out here using deadly force, and no wonder. So with that, I understand we have the individual who was arrested.
William Roddy Bryan. That was the name of him. That was arrested. He was the one doing the video.
He was one of the ones who was arrested for riding behind and videotaping the whole event. It was, like they said, it wasn't because the police saw the video. It was because the community saw the video, and he tried to come across as someone who helped. But further investigation by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation showed that he actually had an active part in the whole thing from beginning to end. So the great Good Samaritan was actually someone who was trying to sneak out the back door and come across as being Mr. Goody Two Shoes. And then moving across our country, moving to Minneapolis. Now, I must say, I've seen a lot of bad cases at the hands of the police. But this thing with George Floyd is bad. I mean, the chief took decisive action when he saw the video as a career law enforcement officer who sat as a patrolman all the way up to the deputy director of a major police department. There is no justification of using that type of force in effecting an arrest. Use of force is not only with a gun. Let's just make that clear. If I have to use force, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm taking my handgun out and then shooting you. I can use a vehicle, whatever I deem necessary is considered use of force. You use enough force to effectuate the arrest. You meet whatever force you're met with, you can go a step up, you can go a degree higher, effectuate it. But after the arrest is made, why was the knee still in the neck? That's like me using use of force to subdue an armed suspect who has a gun, and I'm rightfully justified in shooting him, neutralize him, and then walk over to him after he's neutralized and then continue pumping rounds into his body. Now I went beyond and above the law. Now it's a criminal act. Let's have it. What's your thoughts on that?
My thing is, we all are taught. Go ahead, Steph.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, it's just so words. This thing had disturbed me so bad. I mean, you talk about pain, and people ask, "Ooh, that's what." Nobody never taught me that in the academy. I never, if I might have been absent that day in class, which I never was, but we do not get taught that. So, with people trying to justify that, that's crap.
Right. Tony, what's your thoughts?
True. In the academy, you're taught, you come on training. Once the cuffs are on, that's it.
Right.
The subject, there's no threat.
Right.
Even if he's kicking or whatever, pick him up, put him in the car.
Right.
To sit there with your knee on his neck, choking him. Basically right here, cutting off, his blood, whatever to his brain, you choked him. Then to sit there looking at the
latest video, he wasn't a threat from the door.
Right.
He was in compliance.
No, not at all. And it looked like one of the videos, he was telling the officer, you have the handcuffs on too tight. Right. That video from the store. He kept complaining like the back of his hands, like, menacing. But for you to put your knee on his neck while he's cuffed, you choked him. You killed him right there.
Yeah.
And the mayor even asked, why isn't that man locked up?
Right.
So that's what we're waiting on now.
Right. There was a meme I saw, and I spoke to a friend of mine who called me about my thoughts on the murder. I mean, the murder. Well, that's what it was. On the incident. And one of the things was the meme that he posted was with it was a pair of bloody hands under a sink, and it had a bloody shield on it. And it was a picture of the person, whoever it was washing the blood off their hands. My thing is this: when are good cops going to start taking action? There was one officer, Asian officer, that was there that the community was pleading to them to stop, who took no action or not even tapped him on the shoulder. My partners always said, "Listen, I was a little hot-head. I understand that. When I was a hot-head. You catch these hands in a minute." But there came a point in time where at least someone would say, "Listen, stop. It's okay. You got him, John. You got him." And it's saying, and we looked out for one another, because even though we have a job to do, we don't have the right to be judge and executioner. And when is it? See, these cops are making it bad for good cops, because now Minneapolis is on fire. They're protesting. They're attacking police officers. Every time a bad cop does something, it puts a good cop's life at risk. Because you're suspended, you're on administrative leave. But guess what? Your brothers and sisters, got to go back out on the streets and patrol the streets. And part of it is making sure that we all work cohesively and that we look and we got each other's back. All right? And we don't forget that we're here not to take our frustrations out on people, but we're here to protect and serve. That's what you're paid to do. So a lot of things you got to get out of your skin, out of your feelings. There's plenty of times I could have went aside somebody's head because what they were saying to me. If I was a civilian, that would have happened. But because I was a police officer, I had to restrain myself. And I feel that some of these officers, for whatever reason that they're going through things, whether it be their own departmental or whatever, they're taking out on the community. And when they take it out on the community, they make it bad for good officers, because none of us go to work in the morning when we used to put our uniforms on, go to work in the morning tomorrow. Oh, let me see who I'm gonna get tonight. Let me see who I'm gonna get today. So let me see who's gonna get this. We used to go there with an obligation and a feeling of wanting to help, wanting to protect and serve, but wanting to, provide a service. We do more service than we do protection, really, in law enforcement. If you're doing your job, the little things, some of the things we're going to talk about tonight. When we get into it, you'll see that it's not about always chasing down bad guys. Sometimes we do 8-hour tours and we won't make any arrests, right? How many of you remember that?
I do.
Right? Right? And the service, the feeling we got, right? And I know this is true with Steph, because I know, well, actually both of you, because I know when you do presentations, most of your presentations are not threatening, but they're service presentations. You're providing a service because you have a genuine concern for the community.
Right.
And that's why I got involved in law enforcement, man, to make a difference in my community, to help out, not to really, listen, protect them from bad guys, but also to be that person, as we said last week, on the wall, that's standing on the wall, providing the protection while these folks sleep, while their children go to school, while the old folks go out and enjoy themselves in the park. That's what we enjoy. That's what we got involved with it. So, but every once in a while, you have you got bad jobs, and a lot of times you got bad officers that do stupid stuff like we saw. There's no justification whatsoever to have your knee in somebody's back, cutting off their air after they're telling you that their air is being cut off, and you keep it there for 7 minutes. 7 minutes, man. It's just unheard of.
Yep.
It's just unheard of. But that goes into what we're here tonight for, because tonight we have two guests that I've read his book. That I'm talking about Lieutenant Dalton Price, retired Lieutenant Dalton Price from the Paterson PD. He wrote a book about community policing. He's been going out on a lecture tour, teaching at colleges. He's renowned throughout the nation, the world. He has some excellent things in his book. And then retired Detective Russell Kent Thomas, who I worked with in Newark. He was a community resource officer who worked throughout when we had National Night Out and other things like that. He would come directly to the deputy director's office, because the deputy director at the time, I had community and clergy affairs, and he was right there with me, made things happen. So we have two gentlemen who are here on today. Lieutenant, we're going to start with you. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I gave a brief introduction, but I want you to go ahead and let all our listeners hear about you from your mouth.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First of all, this is an outstanding forum, and thank you for inviting me. And I know most of the people here, and it's a great idea to have these people at the table to have this conversation, because we've had these types of conversation all the time. The community may not see it because it's not their forum. So in our forum, you have Black cops talking about what's going on in the community, how it affects our community, and what community policing is. Mm-hmm. I retired after 25 years with the Paterson Police. My last assignment, I spent my last 2.5 years assigned to internal affairs, which was very different for me. Mm-hmm. I was used to being a street cop, a cop's cop. I went to internal affairs, and I realized once I got there, I can still do community policing. I could still help the community. More importantly, I could help cops to do the job the correct way. That was the important thing. So it's not about trying to screw anyone that makes a mistake. It's trying to help people to do the job the right way. So that was important to me. So that's where I've spent my last 2.5 years. I'm currently the president of the Bronze Shields of State County. I am also the first vice president for the local chapter of the NAACP. So all these things give me an opportunity to talk to people and have real conversation with people and express my view, and more importantly, listen to their view and learn what exactly it is that they have on their mind. And I take advantage of this when I teach. I teach at a college, and that's a conversation that I have constantly, and I explain to the students. I'm here to teach, but you would not believe how much I learn while I'm here. You got 27, 29 students. Last semester, I had a total of 57 students. And to listen to their opinion about policing, I learn a lot about why they think the way they think. Some of them is you don't take it too seriously, but a lot of it, this is their own idea. And you have to respect people's opinion, especially when you're going to give your own. So I'm not going to go any further. We'll have some more conversation, but community and policing go together, and it doesn't matter which one comes first.
Gotcha. That was excellent. Excellent. Well, Detective Russell Kent Thomas, my man. He's busy. He's a CEO. He left law enforcement, found his life after working a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 10 hour shift on the police department. He's a CEO of his own company that deals with community policing solutions. And you have the floor. We want to hear a little bit about yourself. I don't want to tell it all.
Well, first of all, this is an excellent forum. I'm reading some of the comments, and people, this is a much needed conversation. Yeah. What's interesting is in the cases that you guys discussed earlier, the good cops, like you said, would have to deal with the aftermath. of everything else going on the streets because of what some rogue cops decided to do, which weren't within their guidelines. We all know that. So the community policing comes in where you have to build the bridges. You have to give the community an opportunity and a chance to work with you. You just can't come in as an occupying force and try to take over because it just doesn't work. The numbers are not in our favor. In Newark, we might have had at one time 2,100 officers with people leaving and layoffs. The numbers have shrunk. We're down to less than 1,100, maybe. Well, they're down to less than 1,000. And when you have a city as large as maybe 280,000 people or more, depending on what events are going on, you have to have some help in the community, because without that, we just can't function correctly. There's just no way we can do everything we need to do. And community policing is, you're a police officer first. You have to do the job. If it requires a lockup, you do the lockup. But if you have a little leeway to make somebody's day better by talking to a juvenile or being able to go into the school and they get comfortable with you and seeing your face, things just become so much easier. It makes your job so much easier. Where the more things you have in your toolbox, the more things you can use to reach out to the public. There might be certain instances where people are violent and they remember your face and go, listen, that's my man. As long as he puts the cuffs on me, I did what I did, I'll wear that. But when you have other things going on that happen sometimes with rogue cops, it makes everything much harder for the good police officers that are out there.
That's
right.
So
with my company, Community Policing Solutions, we're just trying to build bridges. Because the city of Newark was in a consent decree for they'll be in until 2022. Virginia VCPI built a program. They just gave us a blueprint, and as one of the instructors of the program, we had to tailor make it with the help of Captain Robertella and Lieutenant Byrd. We had to tailor make the plan to fit the police officers, because we had incidents while we were teaching it where you had a young man that decided he wanted to stand on the Newark police, and the fallout was incredible. Because the officer at one point got to the place where he was caught in between and didn't want to do his job. Once again, you're a police officer first, but you don't have to go through extra lengths. And just what happened to the young man, he was subdued and in handcuffs. There was no reason to take it any further than that. You put him in the car, you go ahead and process. So with Community Police Solutions, our job is to build that bridge, build up the community's trust, and do the best we can to help everybody. It makes everybody's life a lot easier.
That's true. That's true. You know, those are both good points. A lot of good points there. But you know what? For our listeners, because a lot of times, and even for police officers, but for the community members who are watching the forum, I want you to explain what community policing really is. Like, what is it? What is it really? Because coming in as a deputy director after years of being an investigator and just going out in the community, I mean, I knew what I was doing to assist me in my job. I had a rapport with the community. I had a reputation in the community of being fair, being trustworthy. But when I came to the department and Director Venable put that in my hands, I learned a lot. But you guys are like I consider you guys to be experts, because you actually were out there doing community policing. And I just want you to explain or just summarize in very basic terms what community policing really is from your point of view.
I would say this. Community policing is, if I'm talking to the community, it's you helping me to help you. So we're working together. You tell me what the issue is, and I find out how I can fix it. And just to fast forward on a few things, we've always heard the conversation of police officers aren't social workers. We're not this, we're not that. But we're becoming social workers. We're called into situations now where we're asked to be social workers. And we have a perfect opportunity to make a difference in somebody's life. You get called on a domestic, there's a 18-year-old kid, and he doesn't want to go to work, doesn't want to go to school. He's being mean to his mother. And you get there, this ain't a policing issue. It's not a domestic violence situation. They were just arguing. She's not afraid of him. She doesn't want him out. So you have an opportunity now. You could say, listen, this ain't a police issue. I'm leaving. Or you can take the young man downstairs to the porch and says, listen, what's the problem? That's your mother. respect her, talk to her the right way. What do you need? Are you looking for a job? You want a job? I can tell you where to go. Call this person, tell them I told you to call them. They'll help you get a job. Whatever you need. Here's my phone number. Call me if you need something. You just changed that young man's life because, for one, he'll treat his mother differently. You can help him stay out of jail, possibly, or out of harm's way. But we have to make the emotional deposits. And this is where the issue comes in. If you make the emotional deposits before things happen, now you can go back to the community. When people know you, they know you're fair, they know you're honest. Now, when everything hits the fan, you can walk into that community, like you mentioned before, and people look at you and say, I know him. He's going to be fair. And the same person says you're going to be fair, you can actually arrest that person, and they know that you're being fair with them. So community policing, it is me helping you to help me, so it goes back and forth. But more importantly, it has to be a department-wide philosophy. A lot of departments have what's called policing divisions or community policing divisions, community policing units. If you think about it, only urban areas have community policing divisions. Okay, a few cops that we send out to talk to the community. If it's a philosophy, you'd be like other towns, the smaller towns, suburban, where everyone is assigned to community policing technically because everyone is held to be nice to people. So we have to get rid of the philosophy that it's just this unit. This is the only unit that does it. That's their job to do that. I ran community policing for a few years, and we did outstanding work. We were recognized nationally. I like to say that I took that unit to a great place, okay, to be recognized nationally. I will also say, after I left the unit, they did things I had never thought of. They did even better work because they took the ideas that they had, skating with a cop, the young boys that were riding in the street, blocking traffic with the bikes. We called them in, they gave them helmets, they gave them a tour, police escort through the city, and told them, this is what you have to do. But you work with them to try to do things differently. But you gotta think outside the box. Outside the box in order to get people on your page, but meet people where they are. And that's what community policing is.
Yes. That's true. And Kent,
piggybacking off of what you
Go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, piggybacking off of what the lieutenant said, he's absolutely correct. But in Newark, they have 2 community officers per precinct. But the philosophy is not for the 2 community officers to do all the work. The philosophy is for every officer to do a little part of community policing, such as just saying good morning to somebody or going by, because that's community policing. You don't have to, you can't be tough with everybody. You can't be just say hi. Kids, the funniest thing, when I taught the GREAT program, I would come into school with pencils. They would change colors. They would do all kinds of things. And the kids, if they didn't come to school no time that week, they knew when they had the GREAT training, Detective Thomas was coming in. He was going to bring gifts. At the end of the year, Steffi will tell you, we had a pizza party at certain places for all of the students. I used to teach 35, 40 classes a week. Go through all of the schools, every single school that was in my district. And sometimes I went into the East and the Central Ward to teach in their schools because their officer was unavailable. And those kids actually grew up, went to college, and have kids. So then they go, oh, I remember that detective. They can tell me what the GREAT stands for. And that's all part of the community policing. Because like the lieutenant said earlier, if you don't have the people on your side, because there's never going to be enough police officers. There's never going to be enough. And in these times, they're going to diminish. You have the community inside. They will help you out when they can, when it's feasible. And that's the type of philosophy the community policing brings.
Well, that's why I had you come into my office a lot, because I knew the work that you were doing in your district. And what I wanted to do was try to model what I wanted to do when I was deputy director was change the whole model of community policing within the Newark Police Department, because starting with Director Venable doing the community walk, that's one of the things Mayor Baraka wanted us to do. He wanted the heads of the department, he wanted the directors to get out there in the community and walk and meet the community, because it makes a difference. So now it's not the community hearing it from a detective. There's sometimes detectives are saying, wait a minute, my hands are tied, I can't do this. Now you got the deputy director out here, you got the director out here, you can talk to them directly. And it was very good, very effective. When we did National Night Out, we saw that every district had their own National Night Out. And going around to the different districts, what you saw in the north and what you saw in the east, you didn't see in the central, south, and the west. And it was. I talked to to Director Venable and said, listen, the kids in the south and in the west, man. Well, I'm a Westward boy. You know, they don't have the same. They don't have the helicopter landing in the parks. We don't have the all we got is the hot dogs and hamburgers. They don't have all the steak and all that other paella and stuff like that. So we said, all right, let's change it. Let's make it one location that the whole city can come to. And that's the year that we did it in Westside Park, because we said, you know, we want everyone. We'll provide buses. We'll provide, transportation. They bring them from the South Ward, because we're Newark. We're one city. You know, we have different wards, but we all have the same issues in our communities. And believe it or not, that was the other reason why we had intel there, because if you wanted to talk to some cops, you could talk to them and tell them what's going on and not be labeled as a snitch. And you can say, hey, listen, this is going on in our community. And, Lieutenant Price, I'm reading your book. There was some things that you said in there about remembering the police that walked the beat when we were coming up. I mean, my dad, he was a police officer, so, you know, it was a little different for me. But everyone that grew up on my block, they knew my dad. And when he came out in uniform, they would get, hey, Detective Arnold, you know, Sergeant Arnold, Lieutenant Arnold, whatever. And they would talk to my issues. And he said, okay. And he can go anywhere. And Jack Utsi was another one. God bless his soul. He was another one who taught me when I was a detective. He took me to the Coachman Inn. Lieutenant Price, I don't know. The Coachman Inn is a bar on Springfield Avenue in the north. We were out here investigating the homicide. I'm saying, dude, why are you taking me to a bar? He said, you want to break your homicide, right? We went in there, and the information that just came to me, we didn't have to ask. By the time I walked out of the bar, I knew who did my homicide, what house he lived in, everything. I knew what the homicide was about, everything. So we effectuated the arrest. You know, we knew who to go to talk to and everything like that. But it was a rapport with the community, and they won't talk to everybody. But like you said, Kent, they'll talk to people who they have experience with, who they know is fair. And that's what, when I went out there as deputy director and we did our community walks, it was a thing about being fair that I saw brought a lot of people in. We had the people that were just not going to go with the program, but for majority of people, they were subjected to those type of being in that environment and in that type of situation. But I think community policing should be expanded in police departments. It should be expanded, and like you said, every officer should be a community resource officer.
I will say my philosophy when I hear people say, well, I remember when I grew up, the police officers used to walk the beat.
Mm-hmm.
The community has changed.
Yes.
Crime has changed. The officer walking the beat now is not being productive.
Right.
However, walking the beat can be a metaphor. You don't have to leave headquarters and walk 20 blocks. Mm-hmm. However, you can drive your car to a corner and get out and spend some time talking to some people.
Right.
You can get back in your car and drive another few blocks and stop in the park and talk to some people. So,
Right. That's exactly right. You still with us? I think you might have froze for a minute. Yeah, I believe that's absolutely right. That's all right. That's absolutely right. When Newark, when we had Kent, when we were there, we had about 875 cops. I believe we had a bunch going through the academy, but we had less than 1,000. We had less than what's there now. And like you said, the problem was with the cops was that they weren't able to get out of their cars because they were behind on their jobs. They had jobs in the queue that they were like 1 hour, 2 hours late. But we try to encourage them that every time they can get out and do something, you don't have to. You know what it is? A lot of cops, they come on the job and they don't know how to do community policing. We were advocating for a course just in the community policing. Before I left, I went to NYPD and observed their whole community resource officer program. And we wanted to send some of our community resource officers over there to experience, walking with them and seeing how they did things and duplicate that back in Newark and put it out there in the precinct so that, it would be more effective community policing. And I think that's the direction that Newark, especially Newark, because they're under consent decree now. I think they're moving. I hope they're moving in that direction. I remember when I was sitting having talks with the U.S. Attorney's Office, they were talking about doing that. But that's one thing they have to get back to. They can't get back to, worried about. I think CompStat is good. It tells you where you are, but I think that a lot of departments, a lot of leadership, misuse CompStat in the event that they're putting too much pressure on the officers to get to get something that's not there. All right, and when they do that, when you want people to get bring the numbers up, and there's really no numbers there, you can't do what you really want to do, like community policing. Lieutenant, you said you had something in here that was very, very profound in your book. It was something to the, I don't have it right here, but it said that if the effective policing is not how the police officers are responding to the crimes, but what they're actually doing. Do you remember that word? I forget what chapter it was, but it was like not the response. Like we always talk about the response. But what you were saying in your book was it's not the response that shows the effectiveness of the police department, is what's being done behind the scenes.
Well, what happens is you have to be effective,
Exactly.
Right?
and you have to know. And it's just like every other job we have. If it's not being measured, then you don't know if the job is getting done. So
Right.
again, you have to. It's not what you did before. I mean, what you're doing now is what did you do before today happened? Did you talk to people? Did you make differences in the community? Did you talk to anybody? Because the response is the response, and there are people who will say, "I called the police and they never came."
Yeah.
Now we know that the police did show up,
Right.
and the person happened to leave before the police got there.
Right.
Now the person did wait an hour, granted, but the police left. So what they see is how the police respond to everything, and you can't just judge it by responding. You
Right.
have to be in the front of things, because
Right.
once you get in the front of the way things are happening, people aren't looking for just a response from you. They want to know that you showed up before something happened and that you make a difference in the community. Once you can do those things and show that I'm here before something happens, again, emotional deposits, talking to people before something happened, taking advantage of situations. And I don't want anybody to take it the wrong way, taking positive advantage of a situation. And I've done it a few times, and I've done it purposely. I've stood in the line at the coffee shop, our favorite coffee shop. You know what that is. And so someone starts talking to me in line. Hey, how you doing, officer? This and that. And they may have a few questions or just talking, or they may say, thank you for your service, whatever. And you get to the register and you tell the person behind the counter, I'll pay for their coffee. That person's excited.
Right.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, to me, I just took a positive advantage of a situation because that person looks at me differently. They're going to tell somebody that a police officer brought them a cup of coffee.
Right.
And you can do things like, what did it cost you? $1.80 for you to have an effect on someone. And they may not know my name, but they'll know the department that I work for. And they'll take advantage of saying, hey, that officer brought me a cup of coffee. So that's how you get in front of things before it's time to respond. Because once you respond, you don't know the situation, and you can't always move in a gentle way when you're responding. But you can think these things through and do something positive before something happens.
That's right. That's true.
It's interesting that you mentioned coffee. When we were doing coffee with a cop, I would focus on the senior buildings. So they have the PA, and before you know it, you got 100 seniors downstairs for the free coffee and donuts, and they're telling you everything that went on in the hood from last time you saw them to now. They got all the information, the cars, they know where the stash spots are. I'm not putting anybody out there. And on another type of note, Coach was in, which I pretty much grew up in there. Coffee with a cop was taken to another level because they serve cookies in there as well. And sometimes you get some loose lips would tell you some extra stuff. And it's right on the strip. And, there was a front and a back door, and everybody would pass through there. All of the legends would pass through there, and stand in the corner and tell all kinds of stories, and you actually gain experience from that. Now, vaulting forward, not only was it coffee with a cop, there were other things that we used to engage in. I believe Steffi was part of the DARE program at one time. And then when DARE left out or was phased out, GREAT program was in there, and the GREAT program, along with DARE, had Batman. Batman was phenomenal. Get well, Batman. I know you're going through some rough period. Batman's back home, but inevitably, you have to use everything in your toolbox. If you have, sometimes when you have to interrogate somebody and you have to talk to them, there is the good cop, bad cop. But just like it's good cop, bad cop in Newark, we had good cop and Bunny Rabbit. And I can't go into Bunny Rabbit's story.
Don't go into Bunny Rabbit.
Long, but basically the Bunny Rabbit, the Bunny Rabbit got all kind of information, so much so that if you go to Walgreens on just before Easter, the chocolate bunnies would be knocked out because they came in contact with the Bunny Rabbit.
That's right.
A lot of old timers know who the Bunny Rabbits were.
Yeah.
Director, I see you already laughing. Them stories are legendary. But you have to everything in its place. You can't be on somebody's neck for 5 to 7 minutes when he's handcuffed. You can't shoot an unarmed man that poses no threat. You have to use the appropriate response at the appropriate time. But there are times when you have a guy running down the street with a shotgun and there is no stop, hold on, wait, because he's danger to you and everybody else there. And you have to do what you have to do. That's the bottom line. Being a police officer is the hardest job one of the hardest jobs in the world, because everybody likes the fireman until it's a fire. And then even if he's knocking out the wrong windows for ventilation, you still let a fireman because they're firemen. They're shot right. They're, doing whatever they got to do. They get to cook. But the police officers are always the ones in the middle of everything, whether it's a domestic and boyfriend and girlfriend who are at each other's throats. And then all of a sudden, when you get ready to put the handcuffs, the girlfriend jumps on you. Now she hates the police.
Yeah.
Or we've had instances where officers stabbed by not paying correct attention to both parties.
Right.
We understand that's one of the things we signed up for. And I have to commend not only the police officers and the teachers, especially the Newark Public Board of Education, because when I did the GREAT program, they made time for me to come and visit all of the classes, all of the times, and it was not an issue. Matter of fact, it gave the teachers a break, so they got to listen and see how. And I learned how to communicate a lot from the teachers because they have to deal with classes all the time, especially if they change classes. And you have to learn how to deal with attitudes and everything else, especially in middle school. One of the problems that Newark police seem to suffer from is you should be able to get people in high school to start recruiting them so that you can get people. The dog agrees with me. So you can start recruiting them. And if you start early with the GREAT or the DARE program, and like we have the police, the Explorers, run by the Bronze Shields, that ingratiates them into the police way of life, where wearing a uniform, staying in step, staying with rules and regulations, that all helps them to change over. Now, I understand the deputy director was from the Marine Corps, so hoorah, yeah, hoorah, yes, sir. Much respect as well to the Marine Corps. But remember, there's nothing like an airman in the Air Force, because I was a firefighter and I could see both sides of the ledger, and the firefighter's job was easy compared to the police officer.
Right.
The police officer, nobody's ever happy when he shows up.
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
And it takes a special type of person to want to run toward bullets. It's not easy, but somebody has to do it.
Well, real quick, one thing that I did learn, because I did the GREAT program too. Matter of fact, I was one of the first GREAT officers. However, what happened is that we found that if we came to these schools and talked to these kids, we had to come back, because if we didn't come back, they thought that they were going to be abandoned. And we found that out. We had a situation where it was police week. We couldn't come that week. They called us from the school, said the kids was tearing the school up. We told them where we were, and they brought them right down to the park. And it was great. And we did have a band, the DARE band, and ironically, we had a sax player from Paterson PD there. I want to give a shout out to Celeste Bateman. Hey.
John, the conversation, we have a lot of conversation about.
For people who don't know, GREAT stands for. No, go ahead.
We have a lot of conversation about
for gang resistance, education, and training.
Yeah.
Right. Not great cops like I'm so great.
Not great I was fantastic, but great as in the program, like that.
There you go.
We talk a lot about the cops. When we talk about cops, we're talking about patrolmen and how they use or do not use community policing.
Yeah.
But it has to be a department-wide philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
and it has to be pushed down from the top.
Right.
You're not doing that. That's why it's not getting done.
Right.
So I had a habit of, especially the new guys that I knew, I'd hired the last 2.5 years, and I'd pass them in the parking lot, and I asked them, "Did you make a difference today?" Just joking with them.
Right.
And yeah, I made a difference. What'd you do? I wrote 5 tickets. I had 3 warrant arrests, and I had a domestic arrest. I said, okay, but did you make a difference today?
Right.
And then they would go back and they would tell me, oh yeah, I did. Yeah, what'd you do? I stopped while this old lady crossed the street. I gave somebody directions. I did this, I did that. Now it got to the point where I would see these same people in the parking lot and I would say, did you make a difference today? They would never mention making an arrest.
Right.
Okay, they changed the idea because did you change somebody's life when you made the arrest? You probably did, because handcuffs could be life-changing or life-affirming.
That's right.
At the same time, this job is not all about putting handcuffs on people.
Right.
You ride around for 11.5 hours, and how many times did you actually do any crime fighting? But how many people did you give directions? How many people did you give advice to? How many people did you help? All the positive things you did, and nobody looks at that. But that's because when you come in, the only thing the boss wants to know from the top is how many tickets did you write?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's an issue. So the problem is when it's not department-wide philosophy, and every time you and Kent mentioned the departments and what you did in community policing, you mentioned what the mayor wanted you to do, what the chief or what you wanted the people to do. So it has to be pushed down from the top. You can't expect a patrolman who's taught in the academy crime fighting, search and seizure, crime fighting, search and seizure, get drugs. You put him on the street, and then you wonder how come he doesn't do any community policing.
Right.
Well, where was he told about community policing?
Exactly.
So it needs to be included in the academy, have that conversation so the officer comes out and says, I'm a cop. I save lives for a living. This is what I do. And I'm a community policing officer.
Right. Right. I agree with you 100% there, because I actually found the principles, one of the 9 principles that you quoted, Sir Robert Peel of the Metropolitan Police Act for the British Police Department. He said, the test of police efficiency is the absence of crime and disorder, not the visible evidence of police action in dealing with it. And that principle is very, I used to work in executive protection. And one of the things we always did, we were proactive. So I always had a proactive approach to law enforcement. One time, one of the protectees told me, he said, well, I don't really know if I need you anymore because I don't see anything happen. I said, the reason you don't see anything happening is because I'm doing my job. And I believe that within the police department, in corporate America, we have to always be proactive to be effective. Police departments, I cringe when I hear it. When somebody says response, that means there's a victim. Someone has to be a victim for you to respond there. Now, granted, there's going to be victims. I mean, crime is everywhere, anywhere. It can hit anywhere. But a lot of the things that we do, which we could accomplish through community policing, can cut down, because the officer or the detective bureau, narcotics or gangs, that knows from a community resource officer that, hey, this house over here is getting hot. This is new people on the transit, people who came through. They moved here 2 months ago, and now all of a sudden we're starting to see a lot of traffic. We're starting to see a lot of bad activity, a lot of bad things happen. It gives an opportunity for the police departments to be proactive, and it's all about relationship. We said that before. The whole reason why we started Protect and Serve was to address the big gap in the relationship between police and community. One of the comments on here was concerning Minneapolis from GK Arnold. Is it fair for the Black and Latino communities to expect the Black and Latino police groups to publicly comment on situations like what happened in Minneapolis? Who wants to take a shot at that?
I think you can expect whatever you expect. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah,
but you can't just say.
Sometimes they don't.
Oh, there's a little delay. Hey, hey, Ken, we're gonna let Lieutenant Price speak first, and then I'm gonna come back to you. Go ahead, Lieutenant.
You can expect whatever you want to expect from anyone, but wrong is wrong, and we've already discussed that.
Right.
But do you put the same pressure on the Black and Latino school teachers? Do you put the same pressure on the Black and Latino doctors? When a doctor does something wrong to someone, do you put the pressure on the Black or Latino doctors to say, hey, he was wrong? If a teacher does something, you have teachers that are abusing kids, there have been incidences that have been in the news with teachers that have had sex with students. And are you asking the Black and Latinos in your community, the teachers, to chime in on it? Okay, and do they need to? When these things are done, these things are wrong, I don't know. I chime in because I want to. I speak about it publicly because I want to. I don't know if we should hold other people responsible just to speak about their profession just because they're in it. And if you're going to do it to police, you should do it to everyone. You should ask anyone in your community that belongs to a certain profession, do you want them to speak up when something's done wrong? And it's done wrong 1,000 miles away from your community. Do I really need to chime in on that? I will give my opinion when it comes to police, but if you're going to hold the police responsible, hold the school teachers responsible, hold the pastors responsible when a pastor on the other side of the country is charged with some kind of sex offense, do you ask the pastor to go publicly and denounce it? No, because you say, well, that's my pastor, and that pastor's over there. He's way on the other side of the country. So I don't know the benefit of having Black and Latino officers chime in. I just know there's a benefit to Black and Latino officers making sure we stand up for what we know is right at the time.
Right. Go ahead, Ken.
That's so interesting. One thing also you have to keep in mind, what most people, civilians, don't understand is that some departments or most departments have guidelines whether you can speak on social media, what you can say or what you can't say. So even though it's excellent to speak out and say what you got to say, you have to still remain within your department's guidelines first and foremost. And also, just piggyback on what the lieutenant said, lawyers. The police department is the only profession where somebody can commit an atrocity in Missouri, and the first things everybody says, all police officers, and we know that's not fair, and we have to wear that. But that's the only profession. You don't hear anything about the pastor that asked for the extra money for the jet. That's an isolated incident. Is that pastor? But when a police officer commits an atrocity, it's pretty much all police officers, unfortunately. That's just a burden that we all are used to bearing. And listen, I'm 25 years plus. I'm 61 days into retirement. I understand. It's almost like a weight lifted because you actually have to put up a barrier when you come home. You have to decompress, and after a while, that wears on you. Especially if you're in homicide or whatever. You're seeing all kind of messed up jobs, and you could have a bad day just because a kid was killed. Just unnecessary stuff. And officers also suffer from PTSD, which is important. We don't talk about it as much, but PTSD, just like the servicemen in Iraq and Afghanistan, police officers suffer from a little bit as well. And the atrocities, and listen, as long as we're talking about certain things, I just want to. My heart goes out. We lost 5 officers, 2 from the 1st precinct, Mike Connors and Lieutenant Clegg. Lieutenant Clegg had more time than me, and he was waiting for the lieutenant's list. Unfortunately, he made lieutenant, but he made it posthumously. That's not the way you want to. You want to go out. You don't want to go out on your shield. You want to walk through the finish line and collect some of the benefits that you passed on. And my friend Mike Connors, who I knew before I was even on the job, Mike promised me, his last words was, Ken, I'm going out June 1st. He never got the opportunity.
Right.
So, and the amount of stress that police officers go through, especially if you're going from call to call, like John said, you're always chasing the radio. You don't know what your next call might be. The first one could just be a domestic. The next one could be somebody shot. It could be a DOA. There's so much going on. And luckily for us in the Newark Police Department, they have the clergy. They have the clergy affairs unit that will go out. I believe Steffi was actually a part of that, where they would go back and they would check on officers, but they would also go to victims' houses and check on them and try to offer another service, which is another type of community policing.
Right.
Newark was, of course, the biggest and the best police department, but not all not all departments can offer such a wide range of things. So that's one of the excellent things about that.
Right. You know, you touched on something, Kent, about PTSD, and you know, now that I'm working with Barnabas, I'm on a committee that works with Newark, New Brunswick, anywhere where we have a hospital, RWJ Barnabas Hospital. We work with those police departments. And one of the things that we're addressing is officer resiliency, specifically PTSD, and those type of issues, because all the work you will do in community policing, whether it be through community affairs, clergy affairs, can all be washed away in 7 minutes. Okay, 7 minutes, like Minneapolis. It can all be washed away in 7 minutes. So what we're trying to do is put together forums where we heal, not only we assist the police department in not only healing its officers, but also the trauma that the community suffers when there's a murder in their community, when there's a bad fatal accident or fire in their community, you know, because I mean, it affects, I mean, officers are humans too. You know, we wear inside, you know, we try to take our stuff off. I knew I had a policy. I never talked about what I went through or what I saw in my house. I would leave it at the door, and when I left, I'll put it back on and walk and drive to the department. And what that does was it was making me sick because I had no outlet. So that's why police officers, we found, have high degrees of divorces, and a lot of them drink a lot. They have a lot of social problems. They don't know how to deal socially with people because they don't talk about it. They don't have a release for it. So we are. I went through one of the courses. It was an officer resiliency course given by a Israeli organization comprised of military officers and police officers. It's something like I've never heard of. The state attorney general has mandated it for police departments, but it's only a 2-day thing, and it's not enough. I mean, cop to cop is something that's good for the officers, but this training really needs to get there. And one of the officers had spoken to me about departments not giving the officers the tools that they need to do the job, because a lot of officers enjoy community policing, believe it or not. They like being out there. They like bringing gifts to the kids and helping families in need. So, I mean, it's something that the communities need to push for. And if you're listening as a community member, you need to tell your leaders in police departments, your directors and your council people that, listen, you want this pushed, because the numbers of how many arrests, that's getting old. I mean, it doesn't matter how many arrests you have if I still can't go outside my door. And that's one of the things that I used to talk to Director Venable. I said, Director, you know, I know police departments are big on, you know, stats and numbers. I mean, it's a good thing. It shows you doing how effective you are and you're doing your job. And I know we need that. I said, but if I can't go outside, if my kids can't play outside, that's a problem. If Mr. Jones and Mrs. Jones can't walk to the grocery store in their neighborhood because, you know, it's too dangerous, that's a problem. And that's one of the reasons why we look forward to walking in the communities to see what's going on and to see what type of improvements. And believe it or not, we made improvements. Not only you talk about addressing everything, man, if there was a street light out in the community, that was addressed. We had an officer who took down the light pole number, and we report to PSNG and say, listen, we need you to get out here now. We're out here right now, and we need you to get somebody out here to fix this light. It's a hazard. And guess what? It happened. And that made so much of a difference in the community. Before we close out, I just want to share, and I want Kent to go and then the Lieutenant to close out. Just tell me what you felt your greatest feeling was in community policing.
Oh, wow. We don't have enough time left for that. I can go for the whole list of things. So, but I'll just keep it short. I think one of the greatest things was when I taught the GRADE program, and then there was a tragic community event. And when you go to community meetings, it could go either way, especially with some of the people in Newark that go to the council meetings where they're looking for that one trigger word or whatever that starts a whole issue. I was able to go through so many schools that when the issues would come up, Steffi's laughing. Issues would come up when I would go in there to a regular community event where people were generally frustrated, upset, very hostile toward everybody. The kids would be like, "No, that's Detective Thomas. He's all right," and it would instantly calm the situation down, make things so much easier, because you have to develop a dialogue, because when two people are talking, nobody's listening. So that helped out immensely. So that happened with the great for the 6-7 years that I taught it. I taught over 1,000 students with Batman and Steffi and a whole bunch of other people. It was just one of the wonderful things. So I enjoyed the community policing and the community meetings that they had in the Old South District, where I had like 30 a month, and people would just meet. Sometimes they would just meet to have a recipe and just come up with stuff off the top of their head.
That's
but
right.
it showed them that you cared. And they appreciated that somebody just wanted to listen to them for 5 or 10 minutes that could help them, even if it was just something that they wanted to vent. And I thought that was very important.
Right. That's good. Lieutenant.
I would have to say the work that the guys did on the unit was the best thing for me. Their work was outstanding, because they would come in and I allowed them to come in with ideas. If they had an idea and they came up with something else, I would say, okay, run with it. You like it, run with it. I'll give you permission to go so far. Need help with it, you come back to me. And because of that, I believe that it made me proud that they felt I can come back with this and I can get the support. Right. They believe I was the kind of supervisor that allowed them to do the things they need to do. With that, we created block watch associations. And block watch associations were designed for us was block to block, because what happens on street A may not be the same concern as on street B. So the rule was you had to have at least 8 households on your block to agree to have a block watch association meeting. And we would take them through training, and we would certify them after a certain amount of classes, and we teach them what to look for. And we taught the Dept program, crime prevention through environmental design. So those things I was proud of, because it got the community involved, but it also gave the community power to do things in their neighborhood, to realize that they have power to make a difference. Everything is not a policing issue, but I can call the police, and the community policing division would give me some direction on where I need to go. If it's a barking dog, if it's someone who has a tractor trailer, who's he ends up warming a truck up at 4 o'clock every morning for 30 minutes. Right. What can we do about that? And is it illegal? No. But can you talk to the owner to say, hey, listen, the people have a complaint. Can you not warm the truck up for 30 minutes instead of 15 minutes? Yeah. Something like that. So little things like that, where we made the difference and brought people together in the community to realize that there's a word called neighbor that's in neighborhood. Right. And question yourself and ask, am I being a good neighbor? Right. So I'm very proud of that.
Right. Well, Lieutenant Price, Detective Thomas, we want to thank you for being our guest on tonight's live. You have brought, I think, from looking at some of the comments, you have brought good points and answers to a lot of the questions that the community has. And we want to just thank you and ask you to, come back again and share on a couple other events that are coming up on this show. So I just want to thank you again for your time. Thank you for your service, for your expertise, and thank you for coming on Protect and Serve.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I just want to get to one. There was a question by Sherry Price in the comments. She said, what can civilians do to help the process and conversation when these incidents do occur? And I just want to say this before we close out, is that, Sherry, you have civilians, the community, have a lot of power in what goes on in policing. You have more say-so than you know, because police officers work for you. Police departments work for the community to protect and serve, but they are part of a department of government, and government is established by the people for the people. So what can you do when these incidents occur? You have to organize these type of dialogues, gives you more information, gives you a different viewpoint. So you're more informed when you go in there and talk to your community leaders. You understand this is why we established this, so you understand the police viewpoint of why we do what we do, and you know how you can move forward in the case of an event like this and have a voice, so that this doesn't happen in your community. So that's what you can do. All right. Hey guys, Stephanie and Tony, listen, man, are y'all ready for next week?
Oh, yeah, well,
all right.
We ready, she ready, he ready.
All right, Protect and Serve, as I told you, it is the forum that we talk about things. We give you the unadulterated truth. We talk about issues that folks don't like to talk about. So sometimes we're controversial. But next week, we are talking about racism in law enforcement. Yes, we are talking about racism in law enforcement. This will be a 2-part live. It's going to take us a little bit of time. We are going to have Lieutenant Rasheen Peppers from the Newark Police Department come on. Those of you who know him from the show Manhunters, he's also doing a lot in the community, but he has some story that he would like to share, as well as some other officers do. And if you are a current or retired officer, mainly a retired officer, we don't want you to violate any policy, but we want you to come on and talk about any instances that you might have had, whether you've seen them with your own eyes or experienced them. Because in this day and age, yes, there are stories and there are truths about law enforcement officers experiencing racism within the ranks of their own department. So as we close out, final thoughts, Stephanie and Anthony?
Oh, well, I just want to just throw out for all the people that's graduating, I just want to give you guys and ladies a good congrats from college all the way down to kindergarten, and a shout out from my my graduate here. Just remember, a mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Hey, that is so cute. I think Tony's frozen on the frame. But yeah, but no, this week is we our heart goes out to all of the graduates who are not able to walk down the aisle. We just want to know, listen, we still appreciate your hard work through the years, whether you're graduating high school or college. My baby girl was scheduled to walk down the aisle for Rutgers, New Brunswick, but that won't happen. So, but they're going to do a virtual, and Daddy's going to take care of her and do something nice for her. But to all of you who are graduating, we want to thank you, and we want to tell you, we need you. You are our leaders. You are our future leaders. So we are counting on your success. We're counting on your voice. We want to hear your voice, especially in police work. As the lieutenant said today when he spoke to the young people, he understood, he listened to them and he heard from them. I remember when I first retired, I walked amongst the community as a civilian, and I heard the thoughts that young people had about police. It was very disturbing and broke my heart, because that's not how a lot of us are. But to all of you who are graduating, enjoy your graduation, however you're having it, virtually, whatever. Listen, you had great commencement speakers last week with the president, former President Obama, and Bill Clinton, and all the other ones that have been giving you great speeches and telling you about life. So listen, this is John Arnold, Stephanie Treadwell, Anthony Cox, our invited guest, Lieutenant Dalton Price, Detective Russell Kent Thomas, saying thank you for joining us tonight. And we look forward to seeing you next week when we will be talking about racism in police work. Take care. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.